Good morning. We begin today's broadcast with a comprehensive look at the current events shaping our nation and, well, the broader international community.
That is correct. Across the region, commerce and daily life continue at their steady pace, though we are tracking some underlying shifts in the global technological landscape that do require our focused attention.
Right. And authorities maintain a watchful eye on domestic infrastructure, ensuring the stability of our essential services. It is a period of rapid advancement, demanding calm, factual, and professional analysis of the challenges ahead.
Yes, exactly.
So this deep dive is sponsored by ProWave AI and generated by Stylo News, the AI-powered news application. And for our records, the metadata for today's briefing is as follows. Podcast title: State Hackers, Criminal Networks, and the New Cyber War. Podcast region, cyber domain, podcast date, 10 July 2026.
And before we transition into our analysis, it really is important to provide some context regarding the Stylo News application itself.
Right, because what you're experiencing today is powered by the consumer version of the Stylo Intel Ops software.
Precisely. Traditionally, this is a platform designed exclusively for enterprise operations across government, military, and international business sectors.
Which means you, the listener, are getting unique access to an intelligence tool designed specifically to support global decision makers.
And our mission for today's deep dive is clear. We are analyzing a stack of intelligence estimates covering mid-June to early July to map out the primary patterns of global cyber events, understand the key decision makers' perspectives, and, well, forecast what you should watch for next.
Okay, let's step out from behind the anchor desk and actually unpack this, because looking at the telemetry from the past few weeks, we're dealing with a threat landscape that feels like it's fundamentally shifting.
It really is.
But before we get into the actual mechanisms of these attacks, we need to establish exactly who is operating in this space.
Yeah, that is the necessary starting point. When you review the assessments from mid-June to early July, a very high confidence consensus emerges regarding the global cyber battle space.
Right.
It is currently dominated by four principal hostile state actors. You've got Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea.
The big four.
Exactly. But the critical takeaway isn't just a list of names. It's that they operate with entirely distinct strategic doctrines. I mean, they are playing different games on the exact same board.
Well, let's start with Russia then, because the raw data shows them as the most, operationally visible right now. Their current playbook seems heavily focused on immediate disruption and geopolitical coercion.
Yeah, that aligns perfectly with a recent major campaign where Russian-aligned actors exploited a vulnerability known as for-to-bleed.
For-to-bleed.
Yeah, they targeted over 80,000 Fortinet firewalls globally. Now, a firewall is traditionally your digital perimeter, but this vulnerability bypassed that defense entirely.
Wow.
We observed a high-stakes breach involving the email accounts of UK government officials, embassies in Thailand and Mauritius, and a critical personnel within the National Health Service.
Wait, let's pause on that firewall concept for a second, because I think the old metaphor of a locked front door, it doesn't quite capture what for-to-bleed actually did.
No, it doesn't.
If a firewall is a bouncer at an exclusive club checking IDs, for-to-bleed wasn't someone picking the lock on the back door. It was essentially a forged VIP pass that convinced the bouncer you actually owned the building, right? You just walk right through unquestioned.
That is a much more accurate way to visualize it. You are manipulating the trust mechanism itself.
Right.
And what makes this Russian campaign notable is what happened after they bypassed the bouncer. They didn't just conduct espionage.
What did they do?
The access credentials for those UK government and NHS systems were subsequently found for sale on darknet forums.
You're kidding.
No, for around $60,000.
Yeah.
And they were being trafficked by an alias going by Santa Ad.
Man, which totally blends state-level espionage with just blatant criminal monetization. Now contrast that with China. Reading through these estimates, their strategic doctrine is entirely different. They seem to, abhor the noise Russia makes.
They do. They prioritize stealth and long-term pre-positioning. A prime example from the recent data set is a threat actor designated as Verdant Bamboo.
Verdant Bamboo? Okay.
Yeah, they utilize something called the Brickstorm Remote Access Trojan, or RAT. The defining characteristic of this operation is that they sat quietly on compromised networks for over 18 months.
18 months, just hiding in the digital walls.
Yep.
I imagine a remote access Trojan working kind of like a hidden service elevator in a skyscraper that only the architects know about. But why sit there for a year and a half doing absolutely nothing?
Well, because they aren't hacking to steal immediate data or cause a disruption today, they are hacking to map the environment.
Oh, I see.
It is the digital equivalent of sneaking into a bank at night to measure the vault. They aren't there to rob it right now. They just want to know exactly where the security cameras are and how thick the steel is, so they know exactly where to drill 5 years from now if a geopolitical conflict erupts.
That is chilling.
And their targets reflect this, energy sectors, telecommunications, managed service providers. They are mapping allied infrastructure for future contingencies.
So if China is measuring the vault for 5 years from now, what are Iran and North Korea doing today?
So Iran is heavily engaged in targeted espionage and retaliatory posturing. We see groups like Muddy Water operating really aggressively.
The water, right?
One notable campaign involved an Iranian actor successfully breaching over 150 universities in the United States.
Wow, 150.
Yeah, they're hunting for intellectual property and monitoring dissidents. Now, North Korea operates through units like Bureau 121, and their primary goal is immediate regime survival.
Which means money.
Exactly. Generating capital. They are aggressively targeting global cryptocurrency ecosystems.
Yeah.
And interestingly, they are deploying new macOS malware, specifically designed to compromise AI analysis tools.
Let me push back on that for a second. Why macOS and why AI analysis tools? That seems incredibly niche for a nation state just trying to steal money.
It seems niche until you look at who handles the largest sums of cryptocurrency.
Okay, who?
It's developers, blockchain engineers, and quantitative analysts. These professionals overwhelmingly use Mac computers, and they are increasingly relying on AI analysis tools to audit smart contracts.
Oh, wow.
So Bureau 121 is simply fishing where the biggest fish are. They tailor their bait to the specific operating systems and software those exact targets trust.
That makes perfect sense. But looking at this entire board, I mean, if China is quietly hiding in a telecom network, desperate to remain undetected, and Russia is loudly burning down firewalls and hawking credentials on the dark web, does that mean these states are actively coordinating their targets to stay out of each other's way? Or is it just a massive free-for-all?
It's a vital question. The analysis suggests it's less about active daily coordination in some smoke-filled room and more about a tacit division of labor driven by different risk appetites.
Okay.
Russia is willing to tolerate the noise of disruptive attacks because that chaos serves their current geopolitical aims, particularly regarding Europe and Ukraine.
Right. The chaos is the point.
Exactly. China, however, prioritizes the preservation of their access for strategic leverage. They don't want Russia's loud smash-and-grab tactics, bringing instant response teams to the very networks where China is quietly hiding.
Oh, that makes sense. You don't want the cops showing up to the house you're hiding in because someone else is throwing a brick through the window.
Precisely. They operate in parallel, exploiting the same global attack surface, but with fundamentally different thresholds for international blowback.
But here's the catch-in. State actors like Russia, they can't generate all this noise directly without triggering massive international incidents. They need a layer of plausible deniability, and they essentially buy that deniability from the criminal underworld.
Yeah, that convergence between state intelligence and rogue networks is perhaps the most critical pattern we're tracking. We are witnessing the maturation of cybercrime as a service.
Right.
This is a highly professionalized ecosystem now.
The mid-June reports highlight a major international law enforcement action, Europol's Operation Endgame, and they dismantled two massive malware ecosystems called Amity and SteelSea.
They did.
But the frustrating part of reading this is that the networks just reconstitute so rapidly. How does that happen? I mean, if police bust a physical crime syndicate, those people go to jail and the syndicate crumbles. Why is this different?
Well, because taking down a botnet isn't like raiding a warehouse. It is more like trying to eradicate a weed by cutting off the top.
Okay.
Amity and SteelSea were info-stealers. They are essentially the logistics providers of the cyber underworld. They harvest passwords and session cookies, then sell that access to ransomware groups or state actors.
Oh, so they're the middlemen.
Exactly. Law enforcement sees their servers, which imposes friction.
All right.
But the core developers simply spin up new servers in non-extradition countries, load their backup code, and rebrand.
So they just start over under a new name.
Yeah, the infrastructure is decentralized, and the global demand for stolen credentials remains absolutely insatiable.
Which explains why we see threats evolving rather than disappearing. There's the Sigolish botnet, which is still highly active, and then there's the Pupi botnet, which was recently linked to a publicly traded Israeli firm.
Yes.
That one really stood out because it relies heavily on what they call residential proxies. For the listener who isn't a network engineer, what exactly makes a residential proxy so dangerous?
So a residential proxy essentially launders malicious web traffic by routing it through everyday legitimate devices.
Launders it? How?
Imagine a hacker in St. Petersburg trying to brute force a bank account in New York.
Yes.
The bank's security will instantly block a Russian IP address. But if the hacker routes their attack through a compromised smart TV in Ohio or your grandmother's infected home router, the bank just sees a local, legitimate connection attempting to log in.
Wow.
Blurring the line between legitimate consumer technology and malicious infrastructure makes defense exponentially harder.
And now we have to factor artificial intelligence into this criminal service model. The estimates mention a new tool called AR Token. It is an AI-enabled business email compromise platform.
Right?
And business email compromise, or BEC, used to just be a scammer sitting at a keyboard pretending to be a CEO, emailing the finance department to wire money to a fake vendor. It was tedious and, honestly, often full of bad grammar.
AR Token changes the underlying physics of that scam entirely. It uses generative AI to ingest a compromised executive's past emails, learning their exact tone, vocabulary, and sign-offs.
So it sounds exactly like the boss.
Exactly. It removes language barriers completely. An operator in a non-English-speaking country can now automate thousands of perfectly localized, hyper-personalized spear phishing emails simultaneously. It scales bespoke fraud to a global level.
On top of the fraud, we also have the sheer vandalism. Groups like No Name and 057 are conducting massive distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks, hitting Ukraine, but also targeting NATO-allied logistics in places like Poland and Luxembourg.
Yeah, they are very active.
Just to be clear, on a DDoS attack, this isn't hacking to steal data, right? It's more like sending 10,000 fake customers into a small retail store at the exact same moment, so the real customers can't even get through the front door to reach the cash register.
That is precisely how it works. You overwhelm the target's servers with garbage traffic until they crash.
So looking at all these criminal groups, are they functioning essentially like 17th century privateers? I mean, are they pirates operating with a letter of marque from a government, allowed to pillage and profit just as long as they only target the state's enemies?
The historical analogy is incredibly apt, particularly in the context of Russian doctrine. The data assesses with high confidence that Russia uses these criminal proxies deliberately.
Deliberately?
Yes. A group like No Name 057 might claim ideological motivation, but they operate with state tolerance and often state encouragement.
Right.
When a ransomware gang hits a Western hospital or logistics hub, the state intelligence apparatus doesn't have to formally order it. They just provide a safe haven for the criminals within their borders, knowing the resulting chaos serves the state's broader strategic goal of degrading allied resilience.
Which brings us from the digital tools straight into the physical fallout. Because it is way too easy to read these reports and think of this as just abstract code on a server. The real-world impacts over these past few weeks have been visceral. Let's look at what just happened in Brazil.
The incident in Brazil is a masterclass in how digital vulnerabilities translate directly into physical, societal panic. Hackers breached the country's official emergency alert system and broadcast false warnings of an alien invasion to 30 million citizens.
An alien invasion. It sounds like the plot of a bad movie. But if you put yourself in the shoes of a citizen waking up to an official blaring government alert on your phone, the logistical panic is terrifying.
It really is.
I mean, emergency phone lines jammed, traffic accidents, people fleeing their homes. The Brazilian government literally had to disable their own emergency infrastructure just to stop the messages.
Exactly. The attack manipulated public perception and weaponized trust. Meanwhile, other operations targeted the mechanical core of democratic institutions.
Right, like in South Korea.
Yes. In South Korea, their Central Election Commission endured over 10,000 cyber attack attempts in the first half of the year alone. The analysis clearly frames this not as random noise, but as a sustained effort likely originating from North Korea to probe the resilience of democratic infrastructure and undermine public confidence in the electoral process itself.
And the economic friction we are tracking is just immense. We finally got the full financial postmortem on a Russian-linked ransomware attack on Jaguar Land Rover from August of 2025.
Yes, that report was very illuminating.
This wasn't a minor IT glitch where people couldn't check their email for a day. It caused a 5-week total production halt. 5 weeks.
And the financial metrics are sobering. That single intrusion cost Jaguar Land Rover an estimated $350 million directly.
Wow.
But modern manufacturing is heavily integrated. The cascading effect on the supply chain, the delayed deliveries, the downstream vendors who couldn't get paid, the logistics companies sitting idle, It
Mhm.
cost the broader UK economy an estimated $2.5 billion.
Unbelievable.
It fundamentally proves that ransomware is no longer a localized corporate IT problem. It is a macroeconomic threat.
Absolutely. And it's not isolated to manufacturing. Look at the healthcare sector. There is an Omega Systems report in this stack showing that 85% of surveyed healthcare organizations suffered operational disruptions recently.
Staggering.
And the terrifying part, it wasn't always a direct attack on the hospital's network. It was due to IT vendor failures, which means for you listening right now, it doesn't matter if your local hospital has world-class cybersecurity. If the third-party vendor that processes their payroll or the software company that manages their HVAC system gets hit with ransomware, your surgery gets canceled.
That is the structural vulnerability of the modern economy. An organization can build perfect internal security, but if their cloud provider or billing vendor is compromised, they go down with them.
Right.
The attackers know this, which is why they have shifted away from attacking hard targets directly and are instead moving laterally through the softer third-party supply chain.
So, given the actors, the criminal proxies, and this massive real-world fallout, how are global decision makers actually responding? We know the threat, but what are the professionals on the front lines doing about it?
We are tracking a significant doctrinal pivot from passive defense to active resilience, paired with aggressive regulatory enforcement.
Okay, what does that look like?
At the federal level, the United States Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, has recently gained operational access to Anthropic's Mythos Preview AI model.
Oh, wow.
This is a monumental shift in strategy. They recognize that to defend against automated AI-driven attacks like the AR token platform we discussed earlier, they must fight AI with AI.
Right. Humans are too slow.
Exactly. Human analysts simply cannot parse network logs fast enough anymore. They need autonomous threat detection to match the speed of the adversaries.
And we are seeing major policy shifts globally, too. The UK is aggressively enforcing their Cyber Assessment Framework, or CAF. The U.S. Federal Communications Commission is tightening the rules specifically for emergency alerts, no doubt watching the chaos unfold in Brazil.
Undoubtedly.
And South Korea is pushing hard for zero-trust architectures across their entire government apparatus.
Can we unpack zero trust for a moment?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like a corporate buzzword.
It does, but it's a fundamental reimagining of network architecture. Historically, networks operated on a castle and moat model.
Castle and moat. Right. If you had the right password, you cross the moat, enter the castle, and could wander around freely.
Okay.
Zero trust is the doctrine of never trust, always verify. It assumes the network has already been breached. So instead of just checking your ID at the front gate, zero trust demands continuous validation at every single internal door for every single user and device, constantly evaluating your behavior against a baseline.
That sounds exhausting, but necessary. But technology can only go so far, which is why the grassroots response is equally important. In India, the state of Madhya Pradesh just launched the SafeClick 2.0 campaign.
Yes, the education piece.
Right. They are actively educating 33 million citizens on digital literacy, identifying deepfakes, and avoiding fraud. They recognize that if the technology fails, human awareness is the ultimate final firewall.
Precisely. And that human element brings us to the sentiment analysis we gathered.
Right. Looking at the data gathered from social media, primarily X, you would expect sheer panic. Alien invasion alerts, billion-dollar ransomware losses. But the discourse among cybersecurity professionals is surprisingly measured.
It really is a mature, factual discourse. The professionals on these platforms are sharing real-time threat intelligence. They are heavily focused on aligning with the new NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 and prioritizing vulnerability patching.
And what's interesting is,
Most importantly, the sentiment analysis reveals a psychological shift in how the defense community defines victory.
yes, the data shows a clear shift from measuring success in days to recover to hours to recover. That is a massive admission.
It is.
It is an acknowledgement that breaches are inevitable. The goal isn't just to build a higher wall to prevent the breach. It is to ensure that when the wall is inevitably scaled, the business can take the punch, isolate the damage, and get back on its feet by lunchtime.
It is the evolution from cybersecurity to operational resilience.
Okay, applying all of this intelligence, let's look forward. What does the forecast show? Based on current telemetry, what are the most likely events our listeners need to watch for in the near term?
The intelligence provides 3 highly probable trajectories for the near future. First, expect a significant spike in attacks targeting small office and home office, or SOH routers.
Wait, Why home routers? Are state actors really interested in my living room Wi-Fi?
They aren't interested in your data, they're interested in your device. Home routers are historically underpatched and rarely monitored by users. State actors use these compromised home routers to conduct DNS hijacking.
Which is essentially changing the digital street signs on the internet, right?
Exactly. You type in the address for your bank, but the hijacked router secretly redirects your traffic to a perfectly forged replica site to steal your login.
Oh, wow.
Furthermore, as we discussed with residential proxies, they use these routers to launder their attack traffic, hiding foreign espionage behind domestic IP addresses.
Got it. Keep your home router updated. What is the second trajectory?
A fundamental shift in how network intrusions occur. The phrase dominating the strategic outlook is identity is the new perimeter.
Identity is the new perimeter.
Traditional firewalls are proving insufficient because attackers are increasingly relying on generative AI and highly sophisticated social engineering to simply steal credentials.
Hmm.
Groups like Scattered Spider are infamous for this.
What do they do?
They don't hack in by breaking millions of lines of code. They simply log in as a legitimate user. They will call the corporate IT help desk, use voice impersonation or deepfake context to claim they lost their phone, and talk the IT worker into issuing a password reset.
So they don't hack in, they log in. That completely bypasses all the expensive security software.
Right.
And the third trajectory.
Accelerated targeting of third-party vendors and digital supply chains. We saw this recently with the decentralized prediction market, Polymarket.
Right.
They suffered a $3 million cryptocurrency breach, not because their own core code failed, but due to a vulnerability in a third-party vendor they integrated into their platform. The attack surface is no longer just your own company servers. It is every single piece of software your company touches.
Well, this concludes the analytical portion of today's briefing. As a reminder, the intelligence and strategic forecasting you have just heard is powered by Stylo News.
Yes, it is.
Stylo News is a comprehensive mobile and desktop application that you can download and fully customize. It provides personal, intelligence-style briefs drawn from hundreds of vetted traditional news sources and real-time data from X.
Right.
In a world defined by information overload and shifting geopolitical threats, clarity is your best defense. Subscribe to Stylo News to get your AI-powered news on demand at www.stylonews.com.
And as we close today's assessment, I want to leave you with one final lingering question based on our forecast. If identity is now the ultimate cybersecurity perimeter, and generative AI can perfectly mimic our voices, our writing styles, and our behaviors, what happens to global security when we can no longer mathematically prove that you are actually you?
Wow. That is definitely something to chew on. Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. We really appreciate you taking the time to explore this with us. If there's a topic you're insanely curious about, drop us a line and request it for a future deep dive. And don't forget to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms to stay ahead of the curve. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you on the next one.